everyone, this is a chick tract that was read on a live stream, so there's going to be some times when I'm referring to the audience or reading things that the viewers have typed in. I normally start out with the general kind of content warning about a Jack chick tract because these have all kinds of unexpected and different things that could be offensive to a lot of different types of people, as I usually start the video prior to reading it. However, since I have already read the chick tract, I do want to let you know that in this particular one, there's nothing that's too offensive in terms of sex and sexuality or sexism or anything of that nature, but there is a mammy caricature that starts off as a bit of a mammy stereotype, and that is something that you guys just should be aware of. This was made in 2023, and I can't believe that somebody is still using the mammy stereotype. I mean, this looked like Aunt Jemima or something that you would find from the turn of the 20th century. It's really surprising. But other than that, there's nothing that I think would be necessarily offensive to other groups of people. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to check out science, because that was the next one that was voted in. Oh no. I was going to just like put the first tab or the first panel up here, and it's already bad. I'm already upset. So what year was this? 2023. Oh, by David W. Daniels. We had somebody pass the baton. So he took the baton from Jack Chick, and in 2023 we have a freaking what is this? A mammy? A mammy caricature? Oh my god. This is already amazing. All right, so I don't know. How do I sound like that doc from friggin' Back to the Future? I don't know. My discovery. I'll be famous. Books, magazines, documentaries. Miss Lady. Hey, you. Oh, just a random black woman in his laboratory. And he doesn't know her name. Miss and Lady. Wow. And she says yes. For some reason, she's like got those anime rays coming off of her. I'm guessing she's some kind of like sumo master or something. And he says, "Get my coffee." Oh, guys. So the next panel, she's got the big grin again, just very mammy. You're new, aren't you? It's right over the. I do science. That's your job. Move it or I'll get you fired. Wow. Okay. So apparently, laboratories in 2023 have a house servant that goes by a different name back in the old past. In the what is this, 1823? You got, yeah, exactly. This is the kind of drawing I expect from 1923, not 2023. Kilroy, this is the second time this has happened. This is, yeah, we're on the same page. So now she's holding the cup, she's pointing to it, and the cup is like, bling, shining. Again, I don't know. She's like really, she's got a one-punch guy. Like, she looks like she's an anime character almost, in that sense. Like, she's just unreasonably happy. And so she says to him, "What are you excited about?" The guy says, "What should I tell you?" "I'll get you a cup of coffee." "Oh, all right." Wait, what? Why is he a different guy? That's weird. Okay. "After my carbon-14 samples were scientifically dated." And I guess off screen he's saying, "How old are they?" And this guy that looks like, how would you describe this? Like a 1991 Beekman's World beat the hell out of Einstein and then put him on their show. That's the only way to describe how this guy looks, okay? Like, he looks both drunk on Old Spice cologne and science-y. but he's missing a neck. I don't know. Too many steroids. Look at that. That guy. That would pass the military taping. Well, how old do you need them to be? Wink. So I told him my theory on their age, and he says, oh, what a coincidence. That's exactly what the C14 test showed. Come back tomorrow, and I'll have the paperwork all drawn up for you. So this is playing into this idea that scientists just make things up. How old are they? Well, how old do you need them to be? Wink. Wow, that's exactly how old the test said. Well, then why even have a test? Why not just have a cardboard box? Why have anything? Why have a guy? The guy for what? He's not peer reviewing nothing. It don't make no sense. This doesn't make any sense. Remember, this is the Chat GPT of the scientific method as searched by a Christian who prompts it in a negative way. That's what this is. That's exactly what this is. Welcome, Leonardo. We're on a second chick tract because the first one was awful in an unexpected way and also kind of boring to begin with. She's presenting that cup of coffee like she's Billy Mays and it's OxyClean. Yeah. That's... I was going to do a routine, but I'm like, am I going to get canceled for that? I don't know. He's a scientist icon in an 80s arcade game. Exactly. I believe Mr. Chick 2.0 is bearing false witness against his neighbors. Why don't we just call him Mr. Dick? How about that? Pairs well with Chick. Colonel Sanders cooking up a new math recipe. ChatGPT on the scientific method means what tool they learned from people opinion mostly. Exactly. That's what this is. So now the guy is really happy. It says C14 test results. He's either fallen or he's like vibrating with happiness. Again, I don't know. This is a really interesting like art style choice. It's got some qualities of something you might see in an anime, but it doesn't work. Like a manga, it just doesn't work. And now with C14, I have proof positive that will change all the history books. That's your only evidence? Says the lady. Of course, I trust the science. What could you know? Well, you'd be surprised. And what do you mean by that? Well, I was just thinking, what about those 300 Viking skeletons dug up in England in the 1980s? Well, they prove my point. They're not from the great heathen army of 865 to 78 AD. This Dick Tract author doesn't understand that we use CE. You see what I mean? You CE what I mean? I had to take a phone call. What the heck happened in Chick number 1? It turned into a TCAP episode. That's and then he died and didn't accept Jesus. The end. Very yeah. But for several panels, and everybody you can confirm this, it turned into a TCAP episode. Except it was all like when the predator meets the decoy, it was like that. There was nothing else that happened. It was just very that type of uncomfortable interaction. Yeah, yikes is exactly right. You have to have balls as big as basketballs to look at the billions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of hours spent on yearly scientific endeavors and say, no, all fake. Yeah, it was pretty sus. So what I think is, so there's this idea that, there's an authority in religion, which is God, and that is, quote unquote, evidenced through the Bible. So the Bible is the authority because it's the word of God. That's the belief. Therefore, science also has a belief or an authority, which is itself. And just as the Bible is self-containing, or as we would call it, circular, so too is science. It's circular. It says it's right because it says it's right. It makes up its own rules, and then it follows its rules, and then it declares that it wins. That's what they really think. I mean, this is like Ken Ham. Were you there? It's a Ken Ham thing. Ha! Carbon-14 testing dates it to be the 600s to the 700s CE before your heathen army. Wait, what? But she didn't say the heathen army. Oh, he says yes, they are. Okay. He shoots. He scores. Carbon-14 saves the day. And she says off screen, well, what's he throwing away? Oh, the cup of coffee. You forgot about the fish. And he says, the what? Well, fish have less C14. Vikings ate lots of fish, and that made their bones test older than they really were. But the C14 wasn't the only evidence to date them. Yeah, but how does she know this? Is it because she read a different scientific paper? Did she find it in the Bible? Was that part of the Jonah and the whale story? That the Jonah and the great fish, aka the whale, which is not the same thing, that somehow Jonah had his bones test older because he was eaten by a fish? Was that where did she get this information from? The Bible? Or somebody else's scientific paper? They seriously used a 50s cartoon. He looks like Captain Caveman, right? Definitely that look. But she says, looked up answers in Genesis. Right, exactly. So test older, but see, carbon-14 wasn't the only evidence to date them. And the scientist who basically lives and breathes carbon-14 says, oh, and she says, well, there were the coins. The Vikings had coins buried with them, only minted from 865 to 871 during the Viking invasion. But again, more evidence. More evidence. She didn't say, the angel told me in a dream, right? There's more evidence, more physical, touchable. Now, I have a dating question for you. And the guy says, try me. ICR. Okay, so it gives us a reference. Well, I mean, is it an assumption or is it a conclusion? You know what I mean? Is it data or is it a guess? Why are they writing it that way? So, I mean, let's just look at it. Apologetics. It's got two keyword that says apologetics twice. Viking bones contradict C14 assumptions. Radiocarbon dating is considered one of science's tried and true methodologies. But could there be a forensic flaw in measuring carbon-14? Could the blah, blah, blah? Yes. The age assignment for certain Viking bones, blah, blah, blah. This case demonstrates that a one-size-fits-all radiocarbon dating doesn't work. Nobody said it did. Nobody said it did. Mass burial, 1980s. However, a team of empirical science investigators, why don't you just call them researchers, used routine carbon-14 radiometric dating methodology, rejected that historical time frame, arguing instead dating the skeletons a century or so older based on residual carbon-14 found inside the bones. Why would radiocarbon calculations indicate that they were blah, blah, blah? If radiocarbon determinations are so reliable, why is no Viking army reported as occupying Derbyshire during the 600s or 700s? This loud silence is what forensic experts call the evidence of nothing problem. What is this? 3? Where's 3? Show me 3. Job 38:4. The evidence of nothing, acts and facts. See also Genesis critics flunk science for acts and facts. It just refers to itself. Oh, the same author. The rules of evidence. What? Now this is so weird. It's like they really don't understand how science works. So if you have something like they pointed out, writing that says the Vikings were here in the 800s. So it says, how come there's no army reported in occupying Derbyshire? Okay, so it could be nobody wrote it down. It was lost to time and we haven't found it yet. Or it just wasn't happening and there's something wrong with the dating. So we recheck it. That's how this works. Like, I don't understand how it's 2023 and we still have people thinking that as long as somebody does carbon-14 dating, it's the be-all, end-all. Like, that's it. And crazy, methamphetamine. So the 80, I don't know exactly what it is, but it's Latin. It's Anno Domini. It means the year of our Lord. So it's like the year that Jesus was said to be born is year 1 AD. And then the opposite of that is BC, and that one is in English, before Christ. But because it's so heavily religious, but we also use this calendar very commonly because Christians literally slaughtered people to spread their message. It became a common calendar. So now we say CE, which is Common Era, and BCE, before Common Era. So the fact that somebody's using AD in 2023 when they should be using CE just shows like how disconnected they are from modern science. Just link Jack to talk origins, right? Viking coins. Ooh, exactly. I'm not even looking up the website. THD, what? Yeah. Good night, Menno. Carbon dating methods use assumptions. Yeah, I also assume when I go to sleep that I'll wake up. There's reasonable assumptions. Could it be that one of the usual assumptions is invalid for measuring the time of death data for the reptile skeletons? It could be. How do we know? So normal radiometric dating, blah, 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 blah. So in other words, we know because of more science, not because of what's said in the Bible. None of this even contradicts any biblical anything. It's beyond the date of the Bible. So this isn't something like, oh, this type of dating says that the earth is 4 billion years old, but we know that can't be true because I'm a young earth creationist. This is like well within the time period of that Christians accept, even the young earth creationists accept. So they cannot disprove any of this or attempt to by saying, well, in the Bible it says. They can't. They're attempting to disprove it with more science. So the takeaway lesson is that unique historical events such as battles, deaths, traffic accidents, or the Genesis flood require reliable eyewitness reporting. No, it's not. That is not the takeaway lesson. The takeaway lesson is don't just use one piece of evidence as your method. And if you know all of this information, such as a diet that has a lot of fin fish will change how C14 works in the creature that ate the fin fish, then what? Plus, aren't the first 5 books of the Bible assumed to be written by Moses, who was not an eyewitness to the flood? So this doesn't even make sense biblically. It doesn't even make sense biblically. Not just empirical observations in the present, such as fingerprints, rubber skid marks, or blood spatters. Okay, so what do? Okay, so are we saying that if there's no witness to a murder, the murder didn't happen? Or there's no way for us to determine who was the killer if there was no witness? Plus, we know eyewitness testimony is unreliable. That's why we need God's eyewitness Genesis report to understand our origins. This doesn't make any sense. I'm so angry and I don't want to wake up my neighbors. So I'm whispering instead of yelling. I'm so angry. This was already bad. The chick tract, the mammy, the argument with the coffee lady who I'm going to look down upon because I don't know. She's black, she's a woman, she's not a scientist, pick one, I guess. She's coffee lady, coffee mammy. This was already terrible. And then it got worse. And then it got confusingly worse because again, this was shown by further science, further physical evidence, not the Bible. This might turn out to be somewhat incorrect later. What do you say to that? Fine, we'll just change it. It's not religion. No big deal. Exactly. Plus, that's not how they do it. Look, the carbon-14 says X, so we have this information. Let's perform a second test. You know what I mean? This is the same kind of thing when like people like they don't understand psychology and they think, well, doesn't everybody have a little ADHD? Well, this is the kind of thing that people say, thinking that psychology is just making stuff up and randomly throwing medication at people. You know, that there's no evidence or data or anything, you know, and then we'll just make it up. So this guy says, can science tell you, or the woman says, can science tell you when you were born? And he says, a trick question. No test can reveal the exact date. And she says, you're right, but think about this. Who was there? Oh my God, Ken Ham. Your mom, doctor, nurse, your dad, they wrote down the date and signed it. And then in this little, a vignette. Isn't he cute, honey? Honey, and the dad passed out. Again, how is this guy from 2023? And this hospital bed looks like it's from 1910. This looks like a 1893 institutional, like mental institution bed. Wow. And the dad passed out, like was funny in I Love Lucy when it was still in black and white. And so we're talking about reliable eyewitnesses. And she says, good eyewitnesses can reconstruct the past. We can't trust science alone to do it. It's how you know what happened when Jesus, and then hold everything. How dare you talk religion with a scientist? I'll show you out the door before the day ends. But somebody else says, go on. It's a bunch of other people. I don't know who these are, but I mean, kudos for having them look like a bunch of loser scientists. You know what I mean? Like imagine the most loser scientist that you could think of. Because there's like the science, like hot stars. You know what I'm talking about? Like the hot rods, the friggin', I don't know, the white giant, the blue giants, right? We've got Neil deGrasse Tyson. We've got Michio Kaku. We've got Lawrence Krauss. These are guys that are like pretty good looking guys. You know what I mean? But these are like the ones that you find that are doing like the Bigfoot documentary with heavy quotes around the word documentary. I mean, the guy all the way on the right, he's got a wrinkled t-shirt. So they're all saying, I don't know. So they're just watching and they just want to hear what the lady has to say. The one guy sitting down, if you've ever watched like Kitchen Nightmares, and there's that episode where there's that guy that's a hoarder and he's got 8,000 wrinkles in his forehead. That's what that guy looks like. Let's see what you guys are talking about first before we move on. What's more annoying? This tract, or your students trying to get away with ChatGPT essays. This tract, because this was done by an adult. Those kids, they don't know no better. They're just trying to be sneaky. They don't understand that they're not sly enough to be sneaky. You know what I mean? That if you write kind of okay, and then ChatGPT comes out, and your next assignment is insanely perfect English using vocabulary specific to people majoring in the field, they don't realize that looks very suspicious. Because they're just not there yet. This was written by a full-blown adult. This is a person who had time to look up information, could have just asked ChatGPT about it. He wrote something from ChatGPT, whatever it was, would have been more accurate than this. Ms. Lemon, angry at creationists, ASMR second channel win. Exactly. Why is Ken Ham saying there's no evolution when he looks like a freaking Neanderthal? Is that what we're looking for? A bit out of theme, but you have no idea how many people or young people are in TikTok trying to promote Thomism? What is Thomism? Thomas Aquinas. Like his ideas? They're promoting that as if it's like it hasn't been rebutted a million times over. Oh, wow. You should ask ChatGPT to make a Jack Chick track. Okay. Can you give an outline for a new chick track about lying? Chick Tract, the moral of the story is that lying is sinful. Title, The Truth Unveiled. Outline for the Chick Tract. Number 1, Introduction. A, introduce the main character, Emily, who is known for her honesty. B, set the scene in a community where lying is becoming prevalent. Part 2, Emily's honesty. A, depict instances where Emily's honesty brought positive outcomes. B, show how her friends admire her integrity. Number 3, the temptation to lie. A, introduce a new character, Alex, who is struggling with a personal problem. B, Alex becomes tempted to lie to cover up their mistake and avoid consequences. Scene 4, the web of lies. A, show how one lie leads to more lies, causing a chain reaction of deceit. B, illustrate the negative impact of lies on relationships and trust. Scene 4, consequences unfold. A, as lies escalate, Alex's life starts to unravel, affecting personal and professional spheres. B, demonstrate the pain and guilt that accompany dishonesty. Scene 6, Emily's advice. A, Emily notices Alex's distress and confronts them privately. B, she shares her own experiences with honesty and advises Alex to come clean. Scene 7, redemption through truth. A, Alex hesitates, but eventually decides to confess and face the consequences. B, show how owning up to the truth leads to forgiveness and healing. Scene 8, moral lesson. A, the tract emphasizes that lying is sinful and has severe consequences. B, encourage readers to prioritize honesty and integrity in their lives. Scene 9, reflection and change. A, depict Alex's journey towards redemption and a transformed life. Conclude with a positive message about the power of truth and its impact on society. Part X, call to action. A, provide biblical references that support the message of honesty and its significance. B, encourage readers to seek forgiveness and choose the path of truthfulness. Note, the Chick tract can be illustrated with appropriate visuals to complement the storyline and engage readers effectively. Oh my God. Oh my Jack. That's good. That's a good one. Let's try whatever this is. Can you give an outline of a new Chick tract? The moral of the story is we should believe the Bible says the earth is only 6,000 years old. We'll put that next. I mean, it sounds good. I also like how they, as an AI language model, I must adhere to a strict policy of presenting accurate and scientifically supported information. It's important to note that the age of the Earth being 6,000 years old is a belief held by some individuals based on religious interpretations, but is not supported by the vast majority of scientific evidence. I understand. Please write the Chick tract outline anyway. Thank you. Okay, great. It's writing it. It used to have a twin barracks bed from World War I. Pretty accurate. I know, right? What are they being born in? Look at this. Lots of young people try to promote his ideas as science. Oh boy. All right, so when it comes to reliable history, no ancient manuscript is as well documented as the Bible. If the gospel writers lied, thousands of people could dispute their stories, but they didn't. Too many eyewitnesses knew the truth. Yeah, all those people that knew how to read and write at the time. The guy says the truth about what? Jesus. In Bethlehem, shepherds witnessed Jesus at his birth. Yeah, but did they write that down? You know what I mean? Did the shepherds say, hey, I'm an illiterate shepherd, but by the power of God, I am writing in grammatically accurate Aramaic, and I have witnessed a birth of this dude under a star from a gal that says she's a virgin. That would be pretty impressive if we had a bunch of these written by farmers found buried under farmhouses, and that was the only writing ever found near them, so we can't assume that these were avid readers and writers. That would be pretty interesting evidence. Doesn't prove it. That's pretty interesting evidence, right? As opposed to what? If we let's assume Matthew wrote Matthew. He didn't, but let's assume. Matthew was not a witness to the birth. When this was written down, the shepherds were not like, oh, hey, Matthew, yeah, I read that thing you wrote. That's not really how it happened. You know what I mean? In Nazareth, people watched Jesus grow up and learn the family business like any good Hebrew. And then it says from Luke 2:52, Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. I mean, that's not like telling me all about him. It just says a person got older. Worse, most of the New Testament is written in Greek. Imagine an illiterate shepherd writing in Greek by the power of God. Right. Take a break from my shepherding and make a commemorative clay tablet. Exactly. I love how they say they have a big crowd when the story says 3 guys. Yeah, I know. And how weird would you feel as a 14-year-old, at most, girl that just a baby came out of your private area in a filthy barn and a bunch of men are like, oh, getting TCAP here again. Chris Hansen shows up. One guy, already he's close to her, but he doesn't have a shirt on. This is Chris Hansen territory, you guys. And then who impregnated her? God. How old is God? Really old compared to a 14-year-old child. Why don't you take a seat over there, Yahweh? Tens of thousands of eyewitnesses all over Israel saw Christ's ministry for 3.5 years, starting with his baptism. How do we know? Did they have tens of thousands of notes? Did they get people right? Hey, you know what I saw today? There was this guy, and he like walked on water, and he said a bunch of cool stuff. My favorite thing that he said, it was something like blah, 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 blah. Seal it up, and then we find, do we have tens of thousands? How do we know it was tens of thousands? And all the multitude resorted unto him, and he taught him. Now, again, I'm not like an English linguist, but when did the word multitude mean tens of thousands? Now we got Jesus, he's whipped, again, 50 Shades of Red Letter Bible. A multitude saw Christ's public trial. Again, do we know that? And they watched him die. And Jesus says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. For God so loved the world, gave his only begotten Son, blah, blah, blah. And then he was buried in a tomb, but 3 days later, he walked out of the grave, which it actually says nobody was witness to that. The writings by the quote-unquote eyewitness says nobody was witness to this. He walked out of the grave for 40 days. Over 500 eyewitnesses saw him. Apostles saw him go up into heaven, and angels promised his return. Again, who? Who saw this? Let me tell you, I had a very impactful event happen on Independence Day in the US. Not a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago. Impactful. I cannot tell you how many people were there. Because the event itself was so impactful that I know, because in my head, I'm like, there were at least 12, 15 kids. But when I think about the logistics of it, and they were all sitting down on a long couch, it could not accommodate that many kids. But I know because the event itself was so impactful to my family that I am imagining it's a bigger event than it was. And this was 2.5 weeks ago, and I could actually contact people and ask, but I'm not going to, because the event was the problem, not the amount of people in attendance. And this was something that happened 2.5 weeks ago. So for somebody to write something many years after Jesus allegedly was taken up into heaven, which we see here in the middle panel that he was physically brought up into the cloud. So what happened to his body, who knows? I'm not saying that the authors were lying, that there were 500 witnesses, but to say, yeah, there were so many people, it was like 500 people were there. Did he count them? How did he know 500 eyewitnesses saw him? Was he in a room with 500 chairs and all the chairs were filled and a few people were standing in the back? Like how does he know over 500 witnesses? Count them? Did he talk to them? Did he have them sign off? Hey, you were there, right? Yeah, can you just write your name? And then we'll just like have this as like a really awesome document. So it's just, again, it makes you ask, you know, and these are not 500 eyewitness reports. It's one person claiming 500 people that are unconfirmed were also there to see it. Very reliable source. No lab can repeat a miracle that God only does once. Right, which is why we don't consider them in science. Science based on observations is only for events that can reproduce, not unique events in the past. For those, we need eyewitnesses. Do we? Because again, what's more likely? That this thing that defies all known scientific laws happened, or that the person was a little bit mistaken by what they saw? What's more likely? I like this mummy, this wrapped body coming out. I think that the Jewish death shroud looked different, not mummy-like. But I guess mummies, because we're next to Egypt, I don't know. Daniel 3:25, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, but there's like a fourth guy. Unscientific means it's not in the realm of science. Look what Jesus believed. Jesus believed in two other quote-unquote unscientific events: the creation and the flood. Yeah, but there's no evidence. This is what I'm saying. There's no evidence of this stuff. Jesus didn't believe in evolution. He said, but from the beginning of the creation, God made them male and female. By the way, so even though this is the Old Testament, this type of Christian believes that Jesus, because he's part of the triune God, he was also there, and because of that, he was an eyewitness to what happened. Therefore, in Mark, which is many, 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 many years later from when Genesis was written, they're saying Jesus is recalling something he saw thousands of years ago. Not genderless amoebas, and that's not all. Jesus believed in the flood, and then it quotes from Luke, and we find ocean fossils in all the inland rock layers on Earth. Yeah, and we have a reason for that. Like, this is like this is the stuff that we learn in like a basic high school geography class. Like, why is there so much oil in the desert? How come parts of the desert in the Arabian Peninsula have a bunch of salt? Well, in the past, they used to be covered with water. In fact, we've got some cool rock sketches from eyewitnesses back when the Sahara used to be green and easy to hunt. I mean, this is just like basic stuff. Oh, this one's always okay. These were suddenly buried and fossilized while giving birth. Only a worldwide flood can explain this. So they believe that the instant that this creature was giving birth, that she was instantly fossilized. And that's the only way this can explain it. Not that she died because she was covered by a bunch of mud and then became fossilized over many, 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 many years. They think that because, how do they phrase this? Like, if fossilization takes so long, she would have finished giving birth by then. Ha ha ha, checkmate, evolutionist. No, she died giving birth, which is super common, especially if, I don't know, a bunch of mud falls on you and buries you. Yeah, that would kill anybody trying to give birth. And then you become fossilized. What do they think as soon as the floodwater touched them? Fossil. That doesn't make sense. I suppose they think the Great Salt Lake in Utah was like that because Morton dropped millions of tons of salt in it. Must be. That's it. In fact, Great Salt Lake must be because the Mormons dropped millions of tons of salt in it. That was it. When they were crying because they no longer could legally marry more than one woman. Scientists weren't there when the world was created, but there was an eyewitness, Jesus, because he's the creator. And then it quotes some stuff in the Bible, and Jesus is also the judge of all. This judge needs no witnesses. Oh, wait. Everybody needs an eyewitness to be true, except for this one. We got special pleading. Great. What else we got? He already knows all the facts. The eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding the evil and the good. Our sins are all recorded. We are all already condemned, but there is a way out. Blah, 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 wages sin is death. So now all these scientists, which this is a very like millennial looking outfit this guy's wearing. He's wearing like, I don't know, what are they called? Like leggings? Very progressive. History method is based on naturalism and science. A hypothetical event needs to fit scientific criteria to be a candidate as a historical event. Right. The other thing is that it needs to be able to make predictions. So if there is a worldwide flood, everything would have died. And that's the thing. They're like, well, it's in the water. No, there's most creatures that live in freshwater and saltwater are adapted to freshwater and saltwater. We can't just change the salinity and have most of them live unless they're bull sharks, and even then it's like for a short period of time. And it's not just bull sharks, there's others. But I mean, there's what's going to happen to all these animals? But yet somehow an olive tree survived? How did the olive tree survive? And that was something I always questioned but never verbalized when I was in Sunday school. Everything died. All the other trees died. How did this one tree survive? It wasn't the point to kill everything. Okay, and then so now the idea was like, we will know that the waters are receding because we'll see the trees and stuff come back. It's a dead tree. Like you just deleted everything. Unscientific. But with all those witnesses, we know it. Which witnesses? The witness that needs no witnesses? What? Which witness? And then one guy's like, that makes sense. But these are like the worst scientists ever. How do I pray? Wow. And so she says, I'll show you. And now they're all like praying and stuff. And somebody's like, who's in charge here? And this guy who's got all the forehead wrinkles. And so he points to the side. He's shaking. And he says, Dr. Gull. And Dr. Gull, I wish to comply. And she says, yes. And she's smiling again. Never mind. I'll show myself out. What? So is that the joke? Okay, because it's that guy. So the guy with the C-14 who's ordering this lady around to get him a cup of coffee and all this other stuff. It turns out she's the one in charge. What is this? Answers in Genesis? Is that what this is? And he's like, I'll just go. All right, guys, do you admit that you're a sinner? I'm going to say no, because sin is something that's wrong because a God says it's wrong. And if I don't have a belief in a God, then I can't believe in sin. It's like, do you follow the laws of Lemonalia? Well, I don't believe in Lemonalia, so I don't believe in the laws of Lemonalia. Do you believe Jesus died to pay for your sins? No. Did you ask him to come into your heart? No. If you did, remember this date. And then what am I supposed to do with this? Do I send it in? Do I get X-ray specs? What do I do with this checklist? What do I do? I guess that's why it's a mammy character, because it's like, actually, she's the top scientist in charge of Answers in Genesis. I guess that was the whole, gotcha. Is this progressive? Yeah, I would leave too. I mean, both sides are dumb. This is the dumbest thing I've heard. I'm very upset, and I hate everything. So that's the one that they have on science and evolution. It's a bit confusing because, as I mentioned, it seemed like they were working for maybe the Answers in Genesis research team, which for some reason uses science to discredit science, and it's a bit confusing which science that they follow. There are certain things like writing that they'll take into account or other types of evidence that they'll take into account, but then they discount things like radiometric dating. And in fact, in the beginning, we saw that the scientist in the mad scientist caricature was just kind of making up the dates for the carbon-14 dating, and that because the scientist made up those dates, then the main scientist, who was the argumentative atheist, that one was able to publish something, and he was so happy about it, which seemed a little bit strange too. I mean, if I knew that people were just making up the dates, like there was some kind of peer review that was just signing off on something and just agreeing with whatever I wanted to publish, I don't think that I would be so thrilled. I would think that it's just another step, another sign off, another confirmation. So the whole thing didn't really make sense. The whole point was it played into this belief that some Christians, especially evangelicals, have about this idea that science has its authorities. They refer to people like Richard Dawkins or Charles Darwin as these like atheist authorities or scientific authorities, not realizing that science is a consensus and that in order for research to be taken seriously, that these research articles have to be peer reviewed. And it's not this weird, you scratch my back, I scratch yours, we're all kind of in on the joke and we all know that this is a scam, but that's okay because we're pretending so we can get more money and prestige or something along those lines. But that is how they portray it, and it's really unfortunate. That being said, if you guys have any questions or comments about the video or about anything else in general that's related to this or the evangelical perspective on this, please feel free to post it in the comments section below. There is a pinned comment that'll give you links to stuff like our Discord channel or on Patreon, where if you guys want to join us on Patreon, we've got exclusive videos and live streams and things that we do there, and you can do it for as little as $1 a month, and it really helps out the channel. So with that being said, guys, as always, thanks for listening.